Hi, Alex here from Create, Clarify, Articulate. Now, a lot of people are interested in becoming better storytellers within their presentations or just in general. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret about storytelling. Now, my mum is a great storyteller. She's one of the best storytellers I know in terms of injecting stories into conversations. She does it very naturally. And about 6 months ago, she was on the phone. I was on the phone with her. I'd called her up, and I can't remember what I was going to talk to her about, but we chatted for a little while, a little bit of small talk, and then she started to tell me about an argument that she'd had with my sister the day before. Now I thought, okay, here we go. She's just going to have a little bit of a moan about an argument. We're a normal family. We have arguments sometimes. She just wants to let off some steam about this argument she's had. Fine. And she went into details and told me about the fact that my sister had got home late from work at 4 o'clock in the morning and had a doctor's appointment at 9 o'clock and hadn't slept and wanted my mum to drive her, but my mum couldn't drive her. And she went into the details. And after a while, I started to realise that she was telling me a story. I didn't know where the story was going, but I recognised that she was telling me a story. It wasn't just a moan about a thing. She was actually getting into a particular story, and I was interested to find out where it would go. And she went in further into the details. She described how my sister in the end drove herself to the doctor despite having had not very much sleep. She told me what the doctors told her. She described how it was very icy on that day, how my sister drove slowly round a corner and saw a dog walker in the middle of the road, swerved to avoid the dog walker, went up on the side of the road and flipped her car over completely. Now, most people, I would imagine, would have started with that piece of information. Most mothers, I would guess, would have said, your sister has flipped her car, but she's okay. Not my mum. My mum is a natural storyteller. She drew me into the story. She described the situation. She described a familiar situation, having an argument with my sister, so that I was drawn in. And by the time I realised that she was telling a story, she was already about halfway through her story. And by the time she reached the climax of the story, my sister flipping her car over, I was completely in there. I was imagining the situation. I was in the story, I was committed to the story. And that is one of the secrets of storytelling. In presentations, we often say, tell people what you're going to say, tell them it, and then tell them what you've told them. Now, this is often good advice if you're trying to be clear on what the purpose of your presentation is. But with storytelling, that doesn't serve you very well. It's often tempting to say, I'm going to tell you a story, for example, about a person who was poor. They started life poor, and they went on to become one of the richest CEOs in the world. But this is not the best way, often, to start a story. The best way to start a story is just to start telling the story. So for much of the story, for the beginning, the people in the audience, they don't know what's going to happen. They're just getting used to the situation. And by the time they realise they've been being told a story, if they do, you're already well into the story. They're already well engaged with the story. They really want to find out what's going to happen next. And that's exactly what my mum did. And that's exactly what I've just tried to do just now. So I used a very simple story structure. I started the story with the setup. I explained that my mum was good at storytelling. And I explained how I called her up. And she started to moan about an argument that she'd had with my sister. Now that's when the real story started. Before that, it was just set up. But at that point, you didn't really know what I was telling you about. I was describing the situation of her telling me the story, but you didn't know what the point of the story is. About halfway through the story, exactly halfway through, in fact, 1 minute into the story, I told you that I realised that she was telling me a story, and this was the purpose of the story. This is the point of the story. And that was the point at which I realised the point of my mum's story as well, halfway through the story. And then I described in more detail and then worked up to the climax of my story, which was that my sister had flipped her car. And that was the climax of my mum's story as well. So that's the tip that I would give to you. Don't tell people, I'm going to tell you a story. Sometimes that works. But often it's much better to just start a story. Start with good description that draws people into the situation. By the time they realise what you're telling them, you've told them it. And they remember it much better. So, good luck telling stories, and give that a go the next time you're giving a presentation. Just jump straight into the action and don't tell people what you're going to tell them. Bye for now.